This episode is brought to you by my bookkeeping strategy sessions. When it comes to your bookkeeping, you're probably in one of three areas: doing it yourself, outsourcing some or all of your bookkeeping to a professional, or understanding what the reports mean and making better decisions from that information. Each of these stages comes with different struggles and questions, and I can help with all three stages. So I want you to bring your questions, and I'll bring some solutions. To book one of these sessions, email me at lydia@dacbalance.com. Now on with the show. You've started a home-based service business, and you've found that running a business is harder than it looks and more overwhelming than you ever thought it would be. This podcast is the best of the best information that I've learned to help grow and sustain my business. Listen, subscribe, and follow along. We can avoid the overwhelm and start creating a business we love to run. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Lydia Miller, and if you are new around here, I want to say a big welcome. And if you are a returning listener, I want to say thank you for coming back, and hopefully we have connected somehow before, but if we haven't yet, make sure that we do sometime soon, especially if you're a returning listener. So what I want to talk about today is how to see gaps in your bookkeeping. So what are gaps? If you're familiar with accounting, then you might be thinking generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP, but I'm not talking about that. That would be really, really boring and not practical at all for you. I'm talking about GAPS, gaps, like a break between two objects, like a gap. So one of the things that drives me crazy is when I read these articles that are like 50 ways to work from home, and they tell you that bookkeeping is one of them. And while I don't disagree that bookkeeping is a great work from home option, that's what I do. Oftentimes people who have no experience with accounting or QuickBooks or just finance in general jump into this and they have no earthly idea what they're doing. They think that because they're good at couponing, they'd be good at this. No joke. Someone once told me that their friend is great with coupons, so she would make a good accountant. I didn't even have the words to say. I just kind of looked at her and said, "Oh, well, she should try. Good for her." I didn't even have anything to say. So for a long time in the accounting industry, there has been a gap between an accountant handling their financial statements and the business owner knowing what to do with that information. And I think it's getting even further divided with more and more people able to get into bookkeeping because there's no real certifications that you have to have. There is a certification, obviously, to be a CPA, but anyone can become a bookkeeper. Anyone at all can become a bookkeeper and do this, and you don't necessarily need an accounting degree, but there's become a gap between just providing the information and knowing what it means. And so if you're doing this, or if you have someone handing you your reports or something like that, a lot of times what happens with business owners, what I've seen, is managers will thank you for their report and then quietly shove it into their desk drawer, where they just briefly glance over it because they don't know what the heck they're supposed to do with it. And the gap between this is becoming wider and wider. So I try to identify a few gaps so you can look for in your bookkeeping and to know how to fill those gaps, to bridge between getting the information and knowing what to do, or just having better business practices in general. So number one, the gap of not knowing what to do each month. So if you are just in the process of doing your own bookkeeping, do you have written policies and procedures? SOPs, or standard operating procedures, are a lifesaver for me because I don't have to think too much about what has to be done. The gap here is this: if you're always doing things differently, you need consistency. If you are creating some invoices in Excel, some in Dubsado, some in QuickBooks, and never putting them all into your accounting system to keep up with who owes you what, then there's a gap and there's a problem. You really need to streamline those things to always know who owes you money and to be able to run reports quickly so that as you're doing your invoices once a week, you can know who to reach out to. Knowing what to do each month is so important, and having those processes written out is crucial, especially if you're planning on outsourcing that in the future. All you need to do is just open a Word document and create bullet points for what you do each month for your bookkeeping. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, you don't have to stress about, oh, is this the best way to do this? Or am I doing this the right way? Just get it all on paper first. Just write it all down, figure out what you're doing, and start from there. That was gap number 1. Gap number 2, running short on cash. If you're always scrambling for cash at the end of the week or the month, then there's a gap. I want you to look at your expenses and see just how much is going out and who you're paying it to. And it may be that you don't need some of those things and you can cancel it, or you can look at your invoices and make them due sooner than what you have now. You can put a 10-day terms on it instead of a 30-day terms, something like that, to where you have more cash and then it's easier to access. And either way, you'll want to close the gap on not having enough money when you need it. I'll also suggest building up an emergency fund and a cushion in your bank account. But if you're struggling, let's just get that taken care of first. Let's just try to, do some internal things to just try to get that cash flow rolling better, and bridge that gap. So number 3, so the first 2 were, number 1 is not knowing what to do each month. Number 2 is running short on cash. And number 3 is understanding the difference between reports. Now, you've heard me talk about the profit and loss and the balance sheet before, and if you still aren't sure what those mean, then there's a gap there. And you need to know the basic difference and where to look to find information that you're looking for. So if you're looking for your expenses and you're scouring your balance sheet, then there's a problem, because expenses are going to be on your profit and loss. So I want you to go back to episode 43, how to read reports, in your podcast app, and listen through that episode, because I give a deep dive on both reports. But if you don't understand those reports, then there's a gap there. Number 4, the gap of realistic expectations. So do you have a big goal for your business this year? And I am one to set a big, lofty goal for myself, even if I know that I can't reach them. If you're setting big goals, let's say to make $100,000 in your business this year, and last year you made $2,000 and have no plan on how to get to $100,000, then there's a gap. I want you to be looking at your revenue and what it makes and what makes it spike, what makes it go down. What are you doing with your marketing that makes your revenue go up? If you aren't setting those realistic and a few stretch goals, then you're going to get discouraged and burn out over never doing enough, when in reality you may be growing, but just not as fast as you would like to be. So if you have the gap of realistic expectations, I want you to actually look at your numbers and set goals based on that information. And this is especially important if you have a team, because if you're telling your team that you want to make $100,000, or if you're even telling your spouse that you want to make $100,000, then they start to expect that. But if you say last year we made $10,000, and a great year would be to increase that by 50%, so you make $15,000 this year, well, that's a little bit easier to track and a little bit easier to get behind than saying I want to go from $10,000 to $100,000. It's just not quite as realistic. People have done it before for sure, but you need to have goals and plans behind that if you're going to attempt that for sure. So number 5, the gap of getting help. So let's go back through the first ones again. Number 1 is not knowing what to do each month. There's a gap there. Number 2 is running short on cash. Number 3, understanding the difference between reports. Number 4, realistic expectations. And number 5, getting help. If you are like most business owners, you are probably ready to outsource the mundane bookkeeping tasks. This is often one of the very first things that business owners will outsource, since it can be such a pain to learn. And if you're already outsourced and have no idea what your bookkeeper is doing, then there's a gap there. So you should have a checklist of things that your bookkeeper is doing, and both of you should be verifying that all the work is being completed. If you're not sure what they're doing, there's a gap, because ultimately you as a business owner are responsible for making sure that all bills are paid and that everything is taken care of in your business. And you can't blame your bookkeeper for your poor management skills. So if you need help filling this gap of knowing what they're doing, you should be you should be setting expectations for the both of you. I would love to explore this some more in a strategy session with you. I may be coming out with a resource at the end of September for this, but you didn't hear that from me. But if you have a gap of getting help or even just knowing what they should be doing, or you feel like you're constantly overwhelmed, then there's probably a gap there. So again, those things are knowing what to do each month, running short on cash, understanding the different reports, realistic expectations, and getting help. Those are 5 areas that I see business owners struggling to bridge the gap between what's happening right now and what should be happening. And those 5 areas, they can be resolved, and they don't have to always be stressful aspects of your business. And I just want to tell you that you can bridge the gap between these. I think a lot of times, business owners with their accounting thinks that they have to somehow have it all together before they go talk to somebody, or they think that they're the only one with this problem, or they think that it's just too big to even talk about, or they don't even know what to say, or they just know that it's not working. Well, that's okay. I want you to take a deep breath. If you've realized that you have gaps in your bookkeeping, I want you to just calm down and take a deep breath and realize that we can work through this. So I would be honored to work with you if you have found some of these things, and if you're looking at how to get them resolved. Every situation is unique, and I can help you find a solution that's going to help your business. So to get started, you can email me at lydia@dacbalance.com with the problem that you're having, and we can discuss the best way to get to a solution. So, if you are ready to use your numbers to help your business, please subscribe to this podcast so that you'll be notified when the episodes drop. And I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Instagram at lydia.miller.mba, and always by email, lydia@dacbalance.com. So until next time, go and make it happen.